I started reviewing a game that might have tanked my grades and exams and possibly ruined my life.
Factorio, a really fun video game and not at all a crippling addiction. A video game that is 10 times more complicated than my actual job, and requires far more work. Just to give you an idea, I spent 5 to 6 evenings building a giant wall around my factory to protect it from bug people. I play this game to relax. What is wrong with me? This is my second attempt at writing a review for this game. The first attempt I had only covered Nauvis and the space platform, and I was already at 4,000 words, and realized no video game review needs this many words, despite what video game essayists would have you believe. So I hope you enjoy this review that isn't 2 hours long and omits many details and intricacies for the sake of time and my own sanity, and because learning those details is part of the experience. No first-time Factorio experience is complete without not knowing what circuits are for 40 hours. And then have your brain collapse in on itself as you try to figure out the if statements in the circuitry. Why doesn't the iron move when I set the circuits to iron equals 0? And on the conveyor belt there is in fact 0 iron. I have no idea. Well, I had no idea, and the solution is something you would definitely overlook. Factorio was already a complicated game and a lot to learn. But now they added an expansion that adds even more stuff to learn. If it's so much work and so complicated, then why play it? It doesn't sound fun. Well, I'm exaggerating a little, but it has a lot of fun moments like hunting bugs, and making the factory is very zen. And it's the satisfaction you get of starting with nothing, a blank canvas, and then you create something on it. Landing on a factoryless planet and making a factory there. It's the same enjoyment you get from making a big castle in Minecraft. It's a lot of work, but feels really good when you finish it. Or the satisfaction I have gotten while studying software engineering, where I start with an empty project in Java and then 2 months later it's turned into a big spaghetti mess that actually works and makes something. Just like my factory. It makes no sense to any outsider, but I know it, because I made it. It's my baby, and any disparaging comments on it will lead to a blood feud. Okay, to be honest, I sometimes forget what a thread of spaghetti does, but it becomes clear when you start at one end and work to the other. Or just pray to the machine spirit that it keeps working and stop worrying about it. Gameplay. So what is the actual gameplay? You're just a little engineer guy running around who can mine things with his little mining pick and make things. While your friends at school were having sex, you were sniffing fissile materials. So now, instead of interacting with the world, you make objects that interact with it for you, automating it. So instead of mining yourself, you make a drill that runs on coal. A good real-life example of this is nerds making ChatGPT to automate social interaction. So let's just run through a single example of this. You see a resource like iron. You put a drill on it and then you put conveyor belts on the output moving into a furnace, where an inserter takes the iron, and if you are using coal-powered furnaces, then you also need to mine coal. So you make a drill there and make the conveyor belt dump the resources on the other side of the belt, using both sides of the conveyor belts effectively. And now the smelting of iron is automated, and the smelted iron gets put into a conveyor belt that gets used by an assembler, which makes, for example, ammo for your gun. It needs more resources, so you do this for all of those resources, and then you have an automated and regular supply of ammo. This is why you play Factorio, because once you finish this process and make a factory, it feels damn good. It is satisfying to finish creating something that you had to think about and plan out. Even though I'm bad at the planning part. I'm more of a point A to point B kind of guy. The factory must grow is probably something you've heard before. And that's because the progression demands that the factory grows. For me, Factorio is a binary question. Is the factory creating at least one of the item I need? It's a yes or no question, a 1 or a 0. If the answer is yes, then the factory is complete. If you listen closely, you can hear veteran Factorio players develop appendicitis at the thought of my horribly unoptimized factory that produces only one yellow science at a time. I also do not at all think ahead when putting my conveyor belts down. This leads to a horrific spaghetti factory and I love it. You know those nice factories that look really clean and optimized? I actually hate them. It's a square modern building. The spaghetti is a cathedral, a work of art. I will not use copy-paste or have robots built for me. I am an artist and these planets are my canvas, and I will pee spaghetti all over them. Actually, I don't care about art. Art is dead. Long live flying robots. I was gonna keep going with the spaghetti, but it just started to hurt. It just hurt to work with it. Yeah, you can unlock robots that build for you and deliver your resources from place to place. And maybe soon we can get an AI that plays the game for you. Okay, I jumped ahead a bit. Let's go back to that example I had. A coal furnace is probably not the most efficient, so you replace it with an electric furnace, and then you don't need coal anymore. At least not for the furnace, but you need electricity for that. Electricity needs steam, so you head to your local water supply, pump some water out of there into some steam generator things that take water and turn it into steam by burning coal. And then you spread some electricity poles around the place so that the electricity can travel to your electric furnace. This is upgrading or optimizing. Pick either word, they both work. And you will be doing this constantly, improving or adding to your factory, iterating on its implementation to make a real masterpiece, improving every aspect of the factory, replacing assemblers with better assemblers, replacing the coal that powers your electricity generators with oil, and then replacing those generators with nuclear power. You will always find yourself something to do, and that's why it destroys your sleep schedule. They talk about one more turn in Civilization 5, but here there are no turns. Everything just naturally flows into the next thing to do, so there is no break point, and that's why I have massive bags under my eyes. Progression. Science packs used to be the main way to progress, and kinda still are, but now there's also the make X thing Y times to unlock this tech. And that's great, because it gives you a goal and guides you on what you're supposed to do. Factorio is a sandbox game with a lot of freedom, so having a path to follow can be very helpful for new players, and even me, a somewhat veteran. Especially when I land on new planets and have no idea how they work. So you go through that guide in the progression, and then when the game thinks you're ready, you move on to the science packs. And the science packs is kinda the goal of the factory, to produce items the science packs need, and then throwing them into research stations. And the science packs will gradually increase in difficulty, and you will need the old packs alongside the new, so the factory will constantly get bigger. But why progress, other than just for the joy of the progression treadmill? Bug people. They breed and spread their nests fast, and want to rip you and your creations apart. And that's why you need to create an arsenal that would make the US military complex envious. The Engineer Bug People War is also one of the better ways to feel your progress, where you first run at them with an assault rifle, then you do a drive-by in a car, and then you drive at them in a tank that fires cannon shells. And then you make yourself mech armor and shoot a nuke at the nests with your rocket launcher. You can also take care of them with artillery or with remote-controlled spider robots. This was my motivation for progressing, creating death machines. Because bug genocide is just fun. Remember kids, killing bugs is always a morally correct choice. Same goes for flies, unless they're bees. The bugs are not a particularly difficult enemy, but they're always a threat, always a danger. They can easily kill you if you're not careful, but they're not very smart. So it's easy to come up with a strategy that will work against them. Hit and run was my most frequent strategy. The bugs are also evolving. They start their process of evolution as soon as you start the game. And your pollution will accelerate their evolution. And it doesn't matter if your pollution clouds never touch the bugs. It helps them evolve anyway. Because the pollution is in the atmosphere now. Breathable bug steroids. You shouldn't really worry about it though. It doesn't accelerate it to the degree that they will become stronger than you. Especially if you have a focus on getting military tech. It's more that the bugs are keeping up with your progress. I mentioned remote control, and yeah, you can do pretty much everything remotely if you set up a radar close to it. You just open the map and then zoom into it, and then you can, for example, change what assemblers are creating or tell your train to start driving the path that you set for it. Trains. Just in case you needed the extra proof that this game was made for and by autistic people, it has trains. I use them a lot, mainly for oil transportation. They transport the oil from my pumps to my factory, so I can make plastic, and brings oil to all the flamethrower turrets behind my Great Wall, so that any bug that approaches my wall gets turned into barbecue. Trains are easy to work with. Setting the tracks, the train stops, and setting the train schedule is intuitive and easy. Trains also need fuel, so dump some solid oil blocks into it somewhere along its railway. Since you can't pump oil as a liquid into it, I suggest just refining the oil into oil blocks right where it's pumped. And then those blocks just go straight into the train. Trains are also a good example of planning versus just winging it. The railway needs space to take turns, so you have to account for that, especially if you're trying to get through a forest. But you can just keep putting them down straight at the point you want to go, but if that means going through the forest, then cutting down all those trees is gonna be a lot of unnecessary work. And then you should have planned out where you're gonna put a train stop that gives enough space for both the train stuff and the factory stuff. If you don't do that, then you're in for a clusterfuck, or you have to fix it all later, which is a lot of work you could have avoided. And yeah, that's kinda what happened to me. Everything needs a lot more space than I gave it originally. And I made the big dumbo mistake of making one big factory instead of multiple factories that do different things. In Factorio, logistics and space management are important. You have a big planet and you can build pretty much everywhere, but the more you build out, the bigger the area you have to protect is. Remember that bugs are constantly spreading, and the only way to stop it is a big wall and lots of guns. And my current wall took like a week to make. And while I was making it, I was playing a constant game of whack-a-mole, where I had to go destroy the new bug nests that kept popping up around my factory, and where I was gonna make the walls. There's also the pollution. If a cloud of pollution touches the bugs, it triggers an attack. So you want to have walls far away from your factory so it won't trigger the bugs. So you do have a lot of freedom in making your factory, but there are lots of limiting factors to consider. And it all leads to the conclusion of making a well-planned, designed and compact factory. Circuit network. This is the only part of the game that's like some arcane wizardry to me. If you want to control your factory down to the minute details, then you use a circuit network. Space platforms and nuclear power are the only places I've needed circuitry. And I used someone else's design to make my nuclear power automated. Simply put, the circuits work like this. You connect two or more things, and on one of those things you read what's happening and put a condition on it. Something like, if this happens, then the other thing should stop. Like, if the temperature of my nuclear reactor goes above 700 degrees Celsius, then my inserter should stop putting the nuclear fuel into it. Or if this part of the conveyor belt is empty, then the inserter should start putting stuff on the conveyor belt. It's extremely useful but has its particularities, and it takes time to learn how to properly use them. And it's one of those things that highlight the depth of the game. And that's just the wires themselves. There's also these logic combinators and all that schizobabble, and I'm not gonna touch that. I think I would turn insane. There's aspects of this game that you don't really need to interact with or could just miss. But if you did learn them, I'm sure they would open up a whole new world. Damn, I love this game. Modules, I actually use them a lot, but there is still an aspect of them I didn't really get into. Modules are things you can put into your factory that will improve them. Like an assembler, I can put in a speed module to make it faster, an efficiency module and it will use less power. Productivity, and it will occasionally make an extra product. And this is all really useful. And it's the fast and easy option of improving your factory. And then there's the quality module, the gambling. People will make entire factories around these slot machines. Basically the guns you use and the shields, lasers and other stuff you put into your mech suit is better if it's higher quality. And you only get higher quality with the quality modules. And they always have a small chance of actually producing high quality gear. And that's why people have factories that eventually make the highest quality gear, where the lower quality gear would get recycled back into the factory. I never did that. I did make some high quality gear, but never went that hard into it. There is a lot of complicated stuff in Factorio, but you can absolutely just stick with the simple, intuitive stuff. And that's mostly what I do. And when it comes to the complicated stuff like combinators, I just look up a design for what I want to do and copy it. The game even has a system where you can copy a factory online and paste it into the game. I recommend actually building it slowly yourself, so that you know how it works. Last thing before we move on to Space Age. Resources will run out. That's another reason the factory must grow. Because you need to get to new resource patches and the map for each planet is effectively endless. At least you will probably die in real life before you would completely explore it. So you will have enough resources. In summary, I love Nauvis. It's the perfect simplicity of just making a factory in a somewhat basic setting. Having fun and stretching your creative muscles in factory making without any weirdness. Space Age. Each planet and space in Factorio offers its own challenge, with Nauvis mostly just keeping the old gameplay of just build a factory and figure things out. But the other planets and space add some limitations or weird way of doing things into the factory making process. I am going to try desperately to speak briefly about the new planets and their unique challenges.
Space, a final frontier.
Space platforms, a factory in space. With its own electricity generation, getting iron and other resources from the asteroids floating around up there, turning it into something useful, like ammo, to shoot apart bigger asteroids that will destroy your space platform. Your start with space platforms is you sending it up to space with a rocket and then delivering the machines it needs to it with rockets until it becomes self-sustaining. And you want your ground-to-space delivery system to be effective and mostly automatic, because you mostly manage space platforms remotely, where you just put a blueprint down and then it builds itself. As long as it has the machine or product it needs. And then if it needs something it can only get from the ground, like uranium or machines, then you can just put in a request and then your rocket silos on the ground send it up there. This becomes more important a little later. Space platforms are a challenge of using space effectively and managing resources. Making sure you always have enough resources for the most important stuff like water for electricity and iron for ammo. Using space effectively. What I mean is a compact factory that leaves very little empty space. Because the bigger your space platform becomes, the more expensive it becomes. Exponentially, because you'll need so many more resources to keep up maintenance and expansion. It's the most apparent in the fact that the bigger platform equals a bigger area that you have to defend with turrets, needing more iron for ammo and turrets to protect the area. This is even more apparent when you strap a thruster onto the platform, turning your space factory into a spaceship factory. A mobile factory that goes between planets. And this is where ground-to-space delivery becomes more important, because you are going to be sending this platform back and forth between the planets a lot, because some resources at least start as an exclusive to one planet, and you will need to send your platform over there to get it and deliver it where you want. And you want your ground-to-space delivery to be automated, so that you can just get the delivery done remotely instead of having to go there yourself as a passenger on the ship. Going down to the planet and getting the item, putting it on a rocket, and then sending one rocket with a cargo, and then one rocket just for you. It's much easier if it just goes there, robots get the item, and then one rocket goes up and you save a lot of fuel. And trust me, going between the planets yourself over and over gets old fast. You can't set up anything new when you're stuck in a spaceship. This is the overall logistics challenge of Factorio. The train and robot logistics networks on now this and now interplanetary logistics. Getting items to and from places in a nice and timely manner with minimum manual effort. It's cool. My issues with the space platforms are minor. The electricity grid for space platforms was tucked away in a corner and I didn't find it for the longest time, and then I finally found it in the menu for the space platform hub. And I thought, why isn't there just a button in the top right corner, in the space with those 4 empty squares? Stupid. And then the other issue is that it was just weird to learn how the space platform worked, like building it, but you get over that pretty quick. Moving on to the actual planets. Vulcanus, my favorite planet, because I am dwarf-brained. Lava filled with metals, mountains, and big things to kill. Could a man ask for more? Your experience with the planets will probably be better if you prepare for them. Basically bringing a bunch of resources like iron and copper with you, so that you can set up stuff on the new planets faster. When you start from nothing on a new planet, then it's slow to get started and going, because you do a lot more manual building. But it gives you more of a chance to get used to the new weird way of getting resources. Getting started from pretty much nothing on Vulcanus took me 2 hours to really get going. At first, you get resources by breaking apart rocks, and in small amounts. But once you get working with a new tungsten, calcite and a flood of sulfuric acid for 2 hours, you get a few foundries and a boner that breaks your desk in half. You take the infinite supply of lava on this planet and pump it through a few foundries, and out comes resources at an extremely fast pace. And normally when you smelt iron, you just get iron plates. But with foundries, you can just get gears, steel plates right away, without having to put it in an assembler. And it's the same case with copper. You're getting the lowest tiers of products extremely fast and easy. And also the low density structures, which take more effort than the other stuff. Where normally it's a bit of a hassle, but here it's effortless. I love it. Productivity heaven. The foundries also make rocks as a byproduct, and you just need to funnel those rocks into landfills or something, so that they don't stop the production because the output got full. Electricity is also easy to get in Vulcanus because of the massive amounts of sulfuric acid, which you can turn into steam, somehow. And that gives you lots of electricity, which you really need here, because all that productivity also means high electricity demand. You're still going to need to expand, because tungsten, coal and calcite aren't in the lava. And so to get some new territory, you become a big game hunter. Like a tourist in India who decided to try authentic street food, Vulcanus is infested with worms. Highly territorial worms, who do not like big machines on their territory, which earns them the death penalty. How do we hunt and kill this giant deadly worm? There are many methods, but there is actually a disappointingly easy way to do it. Just plop down mass gun turrets with the cheapest ammo and lure the worm into the turrets. Just don't get too close to the worm, or the earthquake and lava spouts it creates will kill you. Also, the worms just stay in their own territory. They don't expand. At least I have not seen them do it. Vulcanus is the best. Easy and fast resources. The threat is just fun to kill, and you don't have to micromanage the factory. And most of the challenge is just moving conveyor belts around all the cliffs and lava lakes. I loved every minute of this planet. And like every planet, it has a new technology. And the military technology here is artillery. A really big gun. That's the easiest way to make me happy. Just give me a big gun. Or just a gun even. I'll be happy with that too. I have nothing to complain about on Vulcanus. Fulgora. This planet is the dream and nightmare of environmentalists. It's a giant scrap heap, it's got an ocean which is mostly oil, and any land here is barren, and filled with ruins of a past civilization. And that's the nightmare part for environmentalists. Oh, also there are constant lightning strikes at night. You turn that into electricity with lightning rods and store it in batteries. The dream is that you're taking all those ruins and recycling them into other products and machines that pollute the planet even more. Okay, I lied, there is no dream here, only pain for them. But for us, it's also pain. Because we have to sort through the massive amount of stuff we get through recycling. We take scrap and put it into a recycler, and out of it we get something random, usually something from the higher tiers of products. And then you need to put those higher tier products into the recycler again so that you can actually build something. because you usually need the lower tier products too when you're building something. So on Fulgora, you are playing Factorio in reverse, building backwards and gambling, hoping you actually get what you want, and scratching your head wondering what you're gonna do with all that excess stuff you don't need. Like you get a lot of ice, concrete and blocks of oil. What do you do with that? Well, you use the ice to make water, which you need in the process to make holmium, which you need for the new science. And if that's not enough to use up the water, then just have some water go into electricity generation. You should do that anyway, because batteries take too much space. The blocks of oil can go into space fuel, which you can also use in electricity generation and space rockets. And the concrete, just put it on the ground, you will run faster. Robot logistics networks will be your best friend here. Active provider chests in front of recyclers so that they always have space for output. And storage chests to store that output. And then you need requester chests that take the output and make it go into something more useful. You want the recycling process to keep going endlessly, because recycling is the only way you get holmium, and you also get it at a low rate. And that's why it's also worth it to just destroy some of the output. Like rocks. You're already getting more than enough rocks at Vulcanus, so may as well destroy the excess here so it doesn't stop their production. I like Fulgora. It is a challenge and it's not an annoying one. You just have to keep figuring out how to use all the things you have a lot of. And where Vulcanus gives you a lot of lower tier products, Fulgora gives you a lot of higher tier products. And that's kind of a great hint for you about what these planets should do for you in your logistics system. And speaking of logistics, Fulgora is a bunch of islands, and the water between them probably isn't gonna be protected by your lightning rods. So you have to figure out how to get stuff between the islands. Use trains, finding spots in the ocean that are shallow enough to support a train pillar thing. And that's gonna give you a real weird railway, but feels good once it's working. Just like Vulcanus, I have no complaints. Vulcanus was just fun, but Fulgora is a really well-designed challenge of sorting through and cleaning up an absolute mess. Definitely a skill gamers need to learn. The military tech you get here is electricity weapons, and they kinda suck ass. At least you get better batteries. Gleba exists. It has trees that explode, swamps, and horrors beyond my comprehension. Of the first 3 planets, this was the biggest struggle and the least fun. It's the first planet I needed to watch some videos on it before I could figure it out. Basically, everything on this planet has an expiration date. The resources you use, the fuel, and the products. When you harvest stuff, it will quickly turn into spoilage, and spoilage does have its uses as fuel for electricity, but it's not as useful as the stuff you want. So when you harvest stuff, you want to get it processed quickly, which is really funny, because the fuel source on this planet, nutrients, can spoil, and then it doesn't work as fuel anymore. And if all the nutrients in your factory spoil, then the factory stops. Gleba is very cycle of life, and so your factory also needs to be a cycle, where the resource you are gathering gets processed into the fuel, which will go throughout the whole factory, and the actual product will get pushed out further down the line. But the cycle really is the fuel and the harvested resource. If the harvest processing stops for whatever reason, then the fuel stops and the factory stops. If the fuel stops, then processing stops and everything stops. And when everything stops, you will have to go start the factory again, manually. You know, in a game where making everything automated is kinda the point, having to restart the factory manually is kinda fuck you. I think that's the best way of putting it. Obviously, the challenge is making a factory that doesn't need restarting, and also making an automated way of restarting the factory, and I kinda maybe did that. I haven't needed to test it yet. I'm at least able to restart it remotely. The benefit of the Gleba factory is unlimited resources, because you are effectively growing copper and iron as trees. The trees make more stuff, but you get the point. And the cost is just occasionally restarting your factory like it's a lawnmower. And thinking of Gleba as this cycle of life infinite money glitch makes it a lot cooler, and makes me wanna actually make a good factory here. But let's go back to the "why are you doing this to me" parts of Gleba. Swamp monsters. They do not like the factory. I do not like the swamp monsters. This is why I harvest their eggs to make green science packs. Also, eggs do not spoil. They hatch. Which is extremely funny if you forget that you have some eggs in your backpack. I didn't think I would ever get jump scared by Factorio, but that's just Gleba. It's the worst. I should have expected it though. Gleba does have the horror music. As an enemy, the swamp monsters aren't that much different from the others. Fun to kill, but the attack patterns of some of them are a bit different. Like the one who just runs around you shooting smaller monsters at you like missiles. And the big stompy boys that kill you with the sheer kinetic force of their stomping. So different in their attacks, but they have nests and expand, and you need to manage that. And that's another reason why I like this planet the least. In Vulcanus and Fulgora, you can kinda just set it and forget it. But on Gleba, you have to keep a regular eye on things. Otherwise, your factory stops or gets completely destroyed by swamp demons. Luckily, this can all be solved remotely. The factory stopping can be solved with some assemblers and inserters that you can change the production of remotely to start the factory. And for the swamp demons, remote-controlled spider mechas equipped with rocket launchers. I love this. You have to go to Gleba for this, but it's worth it. I love the spider mechs. I go to sleep thinking about them. Just throw some radars up and some explosive rocket production, and then have some spider bots walk around to make sure no bug nests have showed up too close to the factory. Also place some turrets down at the factory in case the eggs you need for green science decide to hatch. On Gleba, you need to protect the factory from itself. Also, the green science spoils, so you need to regularly collect the science and deliver it to the planet where you do all your research. For me, that was Nauvis, and that's another reason why I like this planet the least. I do not like having a time limit on stuff in games, and here everything has a time limit. And it being on the science packs too was just annoying to me. In short, I don't like Gleba because it requires too much micromanaging to be effective, and it felt like it was too easy for things to go wrong here. I didn't like Gleba, but I like the idea of Gleba. The cycle of life. It's like bread. When you buy it, you gotta make some sandwiches and eat it before it gets moldy. Otherwise, you're just wasting money, which forces you to eat bread even though you might not want bread right now. Or just throw the bread in the freezer, dumbass. Now your bread lasts forever. Aquilo. I did not like Gleba, but it was interesting and fun enough that I kept going. But Aquilo is where I gave up. Aquilo feels like a trap, because if you go there with no prep work, no resources, then you're kinda just fucked. and have to reload a save or wait until your spaceship delivers some resources to you. Because you can't get anything going here without some machinery working, and nothing will work because everything is frozen. The mechanic here is that you have to heat everything up to get it working. Basically, keep the cold at bay. You have to thread a heat pipe throughout your factory. That's pretty easy. With nuclear, you just throw in some fuel and you get heat. The problem is getting the factory started up. For that, you need electricity, and any generation won't work unless you have water. I brought a nuclear reactor and some fuel for it, but I didn't have water on this planet full of ice. I can get water by melting ice, but I need electricity to do that. Are you seeing my problem? I can't get electricity because I don't have electricity. The solution is making about 50 solar panels that only power your water melting machine. By the way, solar power is horribly inefficient here. But the problem is that costs a lot of resources, and I didn't bring enough. And you can't get most resources on Aquilo. You have to get the resources from other planets. So I had 3 options. Option 1, go back up to my spaceship and go back to Nauis. I can't do that because I don't have electricity and the ship has run out of resources. So it can't go back. And the asteroids here don't give me the resources I need to make the spaceship work. Option 2, I could reload a save and then my 30-minute space flight to Aquilo would be wasted. I did not want to do that. Option 3, cheat. I had not been having a great time on Gleba, and the space flying over to Aquilo was a nightmare. The rocks need to be broken by rocket launchers, and implementing and figuring that out was taxing. And now I discovered I was pretty much just stuck on Aquilo and my patience just ran out. There is also the fact that Space Age lengthens the game a lot, and at this point I had pretty much had my fill with the game. Playing a game in all your spare time for a month straight will do that. But Aquilo was the point where I said, fuck it, let's cheat. And see if I can design something awesome. And that's the thing. Even if you cheat, then you still get to play around with the design aspect of the game, like a creative mode. And on Aquilo I still had to thread the heat pipes around, so cheating doesn't eliminate that challenge. It does pretty much eliminate the challenge of making good spaceships that deliver the resources you need to Aquilo. But if you actually want to make those ships, you still have the challenge of designing them well enough that they can survive the trip to Aquilo. You are just skipping the waiting for resources part of it. Same with Aquilo. You would still have to do all the challenges that come with making a factory there, like the heat pipes and balancing the inputs and outputs so nothing will stop something else, and all that noise. So in my opinion, cheating is a completely valid way of playing Factorio. Especially because then you can quickly try out other people's designs by copy and pasting them, and learn the tricks they learned. But I wouldn't recommend cheating, because removing the struggle does make the game far less engaging, and did make me want to play the game less. Aquilo was where I had enough of the game, where I had had my fun. Now it was time for something else. I do think Aquilo did push me over the edge though. Landing there and not being able to start up a factory just sucked. But that's what Aquilo is, it's the final boss. You've been to everything else in Space Age, now use everything you've learned to conquer this place. Use spaceships to get resources, manage the space you have for your factory effectively, balance input-outputs and all that noise. But after about 100 hours in the expansion, my patience ran out. But now that I think about it, the only real challenge is just that you don't get the resources you normally get. Like, threading the heat pipe around is stupid easy. It's just time consuming. And getting resources to Aquilo is time consuming. It feels more like a patience check more than an actual challenge. It is very nice and peaceful though. Conclusion. I love Factorio. If I want to just nerd out in a video game, Factorio is my go-to. It's also the game I go to when I want to literally engineer a genocide. It's a game that requires a lot of patience because all the reward in this game requires a lot of work and time. No instant gratification here. Nuking a huge bug nest involves many hours of work, of manufacturing and research. And that is the cool part. The whole process of making all the stuff and then finally using it. Build up and catharsis. But also the process of making the stuff is fun. And you get to flex your creativity and problem-solving skills by designing solutions to problems. You are just getting the constant dopamine hit of having some problem you're struggling with and then solving it. I don't think there's anything out there that is as satisfying as that. Really exercising that brain muscle. And that's what Factorio is so great at. Giving you problems and lots of tools to solve the problems. Conveyor belts, circuit networks, robots and trains, just to name a few. It's the best designed game I've ever played. There are very few things that I found to complain about. Loving every moment until I got to the Space Age stuff. Most of the Space Age stuff is great, but it's not as good as now this. My enjoyment of the game started steadily lowering when I got to the Space Age content. I enjoyed it, but some of it felt like a forced or weird challenge. And it just felt like it wasn't designed as well as now is. But still, Space Age is designed very well. But when you have a 10 out of 10 and you go down to 9 out of 10, you feel it. But it's still very good, and even as I'm writing this, I want to end my break from the game so I can go back to those planets and really conquer them. And maybe even fall in love with them even more. Because I like the idea of these places, and if I allowed myself more time with them, I could make some insane shit, and have a great time, except Gleba. But also all the productive aspects of my life would go into the toilet. What I've realized about myself is that I really enjoy the beginning and middle part of factory games. But the late game usually becomes a little too much. Just too much work, or they start getting overcomplicated. And that's where I fall off. And that's what happened on Aquilo. I just had the realization of how much work I needed to do for Aquilo before any meaningful progress, and said no thank you. The final verdict on Factorio Space Age. I recommend it. Nauvis is perfect, Vulcanus is awesome, Fulgora great, Gleba interesting. Space, it's cool, I feel like it has the most room to let your creativity shine, but I'm too attached to my first crap bucket and don't want to make new ships. Aquilo, I approached it wrong and didn't really like the entry challenge. It felt too costly, but that's the point of a final boss planet. If I really put the work in for Aquilo, I would probably feel really rewarded, because it has some interesting tech, and I still feel the urge to conquer that challenge. And that's why I think that if I did a second playthrough, I would come away from it loving it more. Factorio is a game that the more you learn and know in it, the more you appreciate it. Aspects of Space Age were a bit jarring at first, but again, once you learn it, you appreciate it. And then you get back to the process of becoming the god of engineering. conquering planets with machines, creating a mech suit that just walks into a nest and everything dies. God, I love that. I recommend Factorio, and you should buy 5 copies of it, and I give the game 5 big fat worms out of 5 spider death robots. This video took a really long time, playing it, understanding it to at least a basic degree, and then writing a script that does it justice, while also trying to be concise. And now I'm looking at like 7,000 words. Fuck. I still wanna play it more. Hopefully in the future I can do it in co-op. Also, I used Factorio to study for an exam. Maybe I will make a short about that. I'm also always resisting the urge to put things into Factorio terms. Like I will learn something in school or talk about some software engineering stuff with other students, and my brain will go, hey, that's just like Factorio. What a game. Next time something simpler. Subscribe for that and have a near perfect day.